It's a real pleasure to see all of you here. Thank you all very much for coming. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, exactly what I'd be thinking if I was sitting out there where you're sitting, knowing that the next thing on the real list is free barbecue. I'd be thinking exactly the same thing. So just turn to the person sitting beside you and put their mind at ease. Just turn to him and say, don't worry about embarrassing it. He's thinking exactly the same thing. Just turn to him and say, man, I hope that dude don't preach all day. Just go ahead and tell him. Well, thank you all for coming to participate in this proceedings to preserve Nicolas Street School as an historical landmark. It's a real pleasure. Before we go any further, on behalf of all the Nicolas Street School faculty, of whom my mother was one, and all the students, of whom we have some of them here today, hey, Nicolas Street School students, and all the students present in body and in spirit or just in our memories, we just take a moment to thank all of you, the Texas State Historical Commission, and all of you who are here today who are involved in making this happen. And again, I really do want to take one special moment to thank one person in particular. A big hand, please, if you will, for Ms. Chris Rez-Mendiki. Thank you very much, Chris. Because without her, none of this would be happening. Well, the Nicolas Street School building right here behind us serves as a reminder of the dedication that was prevalent in the early African-American communities to education and is a tribute to America's continuing commitment to individual progress. It also serves as a joint reminder that America is indeed the land of opportunity and that the past could and should be remembered without anger, rancor, or bitterness, all of which are counterproductive. Nicolas Street School provided the educational foundations for generations of young African Americans who went on to become military veterans, successful businessmen and businesswomen, homemakers, and yes, even the clergy. And of course, we had some guys sent to jail too, just to keep the record straight. We recited the Pledge of Allegiance, we sang the Star-Spangled Banner, we recited the Lord's Prayer, and we diligently studied reading, writing, and arithmetic. Not because we were interested in the subject, but because our teachers didn't play. We had two dedicated teachers. By the way, on this side of the building, or let me put this together, on this side of the building was a room with a sliding door, and on this side, on the other side of the sliding door, was a second classroom. Here was room A with the first, second, third, and fourth grades all in one classroom under one teacher. And on this side was the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grades all in one classroom under one teacher. And guess what? There were no disciplinary problems. We had something that they had, which they applied diligently. It was called Big Jim. For the uninitiated, Big Jim was the side of a wooden Coca-Cola case. And you got out of line, you got to taste the Big Jim. And there were no complaints about brutality, because when you got home, you got it again for misbehaving in school. We were taught in this two-room school by two teachers for 8 grades that any limitations that were placed on us were not by segregation, but by ourselves. In fact, the truth of the matter is, folks, we did not know, nor were we taught, that we were segregated. Nobody told us that Nicolas Street School was a segregated school. This was where all of our friends went. I didn't know nobody up at West Gordon or West Main. What would I be doing up there? All the people I knew were right here at Nicolas Street School. Teachers we knew, the parents we knew, they lived all around this neighborhood, so that's why we were here. It's where all of our friends went, and like, unfortunately, today, as many people are taught, we were not taught that we were entitled to anything, but that laziness and ignorance was the cause of poverty or failure, not just because you were black. The textbooks that we got were brought into us from the white schools. They were used because you'd find people writing in them and stuff like this, and we'd have them in these classrooms, but they contained the same information They knew about Columbus, the Mayflower, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, but so did we. We learned them from the same books. We celebrated the 4th of July because that's when freedom came to America. But here at Nicolas, we also celebrated the 19th of June, speaking of dates. That was when freedom came to Texas for black Americans. On Juneteenth, we called it, we had barbecue, red sodas, hand-churned ice cream that we churned. We played baseball right here on this field behind you, and later on, right across the street was a place called Mr. Joe's. It was a bar where the grown folks had their cold beer and their dance later on. But the next Monday, and every Monday thereafter, we were right back in school, standing at attention and facing the flag and reciting, and I can still hear my teacher saying, "In unison, children, the Pledge of Allegiance." Would you join me in reciting in unison, please, the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You see, somebody said, well, you left out under God. Well, under God was not in our pledge until 1954. But God was in our classrooms all along. Nicolas Street School is more than just a building. It's more than just an historical marker. It's a signpost on the road that leads to the continuing promise of America, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. America is fulfilling its promise. Is it perfect? No. There's only one perfect place in existence, and that's heaven. And the only way to get there is through the one perfect individual who ever lived. But everybody else, like the person sitting next to you, is doing the best they can to make their life the best they could. And if they aren't, then you ought to be. Turn to the person next to you and say, I hope you're doing that. And since this lady called me Reverend Kinchlow, there's also one other thing that we did every Monday morning after we said the Pledge of Allegiance. We had one of our leading students, a senior, who was senior at those times was somebody who was in the 8th grade. The 8th grade student would get up and say, we'd all join together, the doors would be open, it was assembly every Monday, and we'd all start our week off. And I'd like to ask you to close out these proceedings with the way we started our week every Monday morning by reciting something that's familiar to all of us. We all bowed our heads and said the Lord's Prayer. Would you bow your heads and join with me and say out loud together the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Amen. God bless you. Thank you all for coming. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Now we may proceed over around the corner, and we would like you